Hello and welcome to Successful Field Test Episode 2. I just wanted to start out by saying thank you to everyone who showed their support for the first episode. It's been really nice and I'm always happy to receive feedback and comments either through the YouTube comment section or through whatever social media platform you found this through. Without any further cliched thank yous, I will move on to the deck for this week. This week we are going to be playing a Skorpios Defense Systems Rigshooter deck. So this is the new ID from Terminal Directive. Going to be removing runner cards from the game when they get trashed, and to support that we are going to be trashing their cards. So this is effectively a rush deck that also has the ability to lock the runner out by blowing up their icebreakers. We are playing cheap gear checks for our barriers and code gates, and then that's supported by these destroyer sentries. In terms of particular choices in the ice department, I've got 3 wraparounds in the deck at the moment. I had a bit of influence which I would consider spare after the 3 Marcus Batties. Really, I think the remaining 6 you can spend on a fairly reasonable spread of things. There are quite a lot of decks around right now that are using Eater still out of the Anarch faction, and then criminals are also playing Mammon. Shapers occasionally have Artman, and there's also Parasites as well, so this still has quite a lot of utility, even with Faust being largely a thing of the past. Apart from that, these code gates, I'm still not 100% sure about Hortum. I don't really think I'll be advancing it very much, but it's really just doing a sort of second Enigma job. I really love Enigma for this kind of deck. The click loss is actually really powerful when they face check it early game because it can delay their setup, which is exactly what you want for a rush deck. And then Hortum is just sort of doing a slightly stronger impression. It's still effectively free to res if they can't break the 1 credit subroutine, and it does tax them a little bit more, and occasionally this deck might want to do that. The sentries I'm playing, we've got Sapper, which I think is really useful because of the R&D and HQ access ability. It just means that you have a bit more sort of passive defense. A lot of the time this deck will be leaving R&D open in the early game, sometimes even HQ open if it's not, say, a criminal deck where we're worried about a count siphon, and then it can mean that they don't necessarily protect themselves against sentries in the early game, still want to install some other programs. Say they install a Fractor to get through your Ice Wall and R&D, go through it, hit the Sapper, which we're not expecting, and you can get rid of their Fractor. Then we've also got Colossus, which is the most expensive piece of ice in this deck, but I think it's worth it. It's got a lot of upsides to it, so the advancement here is actually more relevant, I think, because of the strength changing. Lets you dodge Artman if they install it, and also sometimes you just want to make a really big piece of ice. Apart from that, strength 4 base means it's out of mimic range without data sucker support, and the 2 subroutines are both fairly relevant. Although we're not playing a kill plan in this deck just because I want to be entirely focused on the Rigshooter aspect, tags are still useful because we can actually remove resources from the game, and some of the resources runners are playing right now are quite annoying to us, such as Film Critic or Sacrificial Construct. Looking over here at the agenda suite, I'd say this is a fairly simple set of agendas for a Wayland Rush deck. Project Atlas and Oakdown Renovation are probably the strongest 2-point agendas that Wayland can play, and they both have very good reasons to play them. Hostile Takeover effectively just lets us fast advance out if we can get an Atlas with counters on it. I've been playing 1 GFI, which can sometimes accelerate you, so if you have a really good remote server, use an Atlas counter, get the GFI, and then in 2 turns you've scored 3 points. It's really there as a sort of, when the game is close to being locked up, then you finish the game quickly using this. Then on the asset front, 2 Jackson Howard I think is fine in the 44 card deck. A lot of the time this deck doesn't want to be using Jackson to shuffle back in agendas because we want to be scoring them. And then I'm supporting it using Illegal Arms Factory. So this is a new card which is quite interesting, and I'm still not 100% sure about it, which is why I'm playing 3 copies. I want to see how it does. And really I just think that drawing extra cards is going to be quite useful for this deck. We want to be drawing our agendas and the ice to protect them. So I think this card is completely fine. The bad publicity shouldn't be too much of a downside in a rush deck like this. We should be able to create a situation where the runner can't really benefit too much from our bad publicity, simply because they don't have the appropriate icebreaker to break the ice using it. So I think that's basically everything I want to talk about with the deck. Let's move on to some games.